There's nothing you can do that can't be done, nothing you can sing that can't be sung, nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's Vaguely Scientific. Little darlin', the smiles return into their faces. Little darlin', it seems like years since I am Derek. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to Jim. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, you could just jimmy those wing bones back in place.
Oh, yeah, that's more thought than I put into it. And get back, get Dak to where you once belonged. Welcome back, Dak.
I regret all of this already.
Well, so do we. This is the show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for Jim's fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. This one's about turtles, because they're cool.
I like turtles.
The earliest known turtle evolved during the Permian period about 260 million years ago. Instead of a true shell, it had a series of elongated ribs that it used for protection. Also, apparently turtles had teeth way back then.
Whoa.
Do they still have teeth, right?
I think a lot of turtles don't have teeth.
Oh.
I feel
we
like you should have looked this up beforehand.
Yeah, you know what? We did look this up a while ago because we were like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shouldn't have had teeth because turtles don't have teeth.
Oh,
wow!
Because one of the live action movies they had teeth.
I think most of them they had teeth.
Oh yeah, you're right. But there was one very specific live action movie. I think it was that first one that was like.
You're correct. It's turtles do not have teeth, but we did learn that turtles fart. That was the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are two related things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. So they did have teeth back in the day, though.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Any reason why they don't now?
That's a good question. That I didn't look up.
I mean, birds used to have teeth too. Like there used to be.
All right, you gotta stop
birds.
making up animals, Derek.
Birds?
Yeah.
Bees?
Not the bees.
Not the bees.
Well, speaking of making up animals, I guess we should move on to our first question this week. It's not really that good of a segue. That's not related to this
I
at
thought
all.
it was perfect, honestly.
Was
Stuck
it?
the
Okay.
landing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You just got to commit. You got to power through.
I got to power through it. We're going to power through it. And just, okay. Yeah. So question 1 this week comes to us from Saber. How does a Katamari Damacy ball work? Is there a mini black hole inside? And if so, why doesn't it suck everything else inside?
Whoa.
Can we start with a description of what a Katamari Damacy ball is?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a video game called Katamari Damacy in which there's a thing called I believe it's just called a Katamari.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this tiny little ball that absorbs objects around it and starting very small and then ultimately getting very big and they ultimately turn them into stars and other celestial bodies.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is though is that it doesn't absorb them though. It's just sort of they stick.
They just stick to it. Well, that's why my first response to it was going to be just the second part of the question, is there a mini black hole? I just think it's not a black hole.
Okay. I was thinking a lot about the black hole because the idea that maybe there's something very, very dense inside of it is kind of an appealing one because like things will stick to it very, very tightly. Now, sometimes if you crash into something with this Katamari that has a bunch of stuff stuck to it, stuff will fly off of it. So that's another reason where I'm like, maybe there's some gravity involved in here because it's not a perfect stick. Like once something is stuck, it has the ability to maybe get knocked loose. And you know, same with a planet. You know, you hit it with a meteor and it blasts a bunch of rocks into space.
So planets are also Katamari.
I mean, technically,
well,
according to the canon of the game,
stars and the moon are at least. So probably
true,
planets.
Yeah. So, well, okay, let's not forget that there's a little guy pushing the Katamari
Yes.
around, right? And so like, why is he not getting absorbed into this,
Ooh,
gravitational force field thing?
excellent point. This doesn't really answer the question, but I do want to point out that the little dude pushing the Katamari around is reminiscent of the Egyptian god Khepri, who was the scarab beetle-headed god. And it was Khepri is the god of rebirth and the morning and life. And the story goes, because Khepri is a scarab beetle, which is a dung beetle, the idea is that Khepri is rolling the sun across the sky. And I thought it was fitting that they ultimately, now this is the lore of the game, they ultimately turn these Katamari balls into stars. So like that's how, so the little dude rolling the ball is like somehow a mover or a god of some kind.
I totally buy that. I think that the prince is easily a god as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's the prince of all cosmos.
And you know what? That brings up a good point. Let's not forget that the king of the cosmos is presumably the one who created the Katamari, which means
good point.
He either has some sort of control over the cosmos, or at the very least a very in-depth knowledge of its inner workings in physics, right?
I would think so, yeah.
So I guess if the prince is rolling this around, if it was a gravitational field or something like a black hole where it was sucking everything in, I feel like we would get a lot more, like we'd get things being more passively attracted to the ball as he rolls around. Like you'd get objects kind of moving across the floor, like you have a magnet next to a paperclip or something, right? And it doesn't really work like that. It's like as soon as it makes contact, that's when it sticks, right?
Oh, interesting. Because I was looking at magnets, but you're right. They don't get like pulled into it.
Right.
What about something? Okay, you know how you can extend a superconductor into like a state of quantum locking? Like if you super cool something. Like what if?
Yes, I know that.
What? Jim, you're a scientist. Did I make all of those words up?
You didn't make them up. They just were in a very new order.
Okay, good. So, no, but you've seen like those things where someone like will pour, I don't know, like liquid nitrogen on, I don't know, magnet or something, and then put a magnet. I actually have no idea how this works, but that's why this is vaguely scientific.
Yeah.
And they'll like basically extend a magnet in the air. It'll essentially levitate, and the person can manipulate the magnet in air, and it will stay in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a really weird phenomena of like extremely cold. And this is sort of the same thing with like extremely cold semiconductors too, where it will change the flow of electricity. When you cool things down, sometimes their electromagnetic properties get real funky.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, it's cool. There's like a lot of random YouTube videos about that, but it begs the question. Let's say that the king of the cosmos has infinite knowledge and access to everything in space. Is there perhaps some undiscovered element or particle or even something like dark matter that we can't comprehend at the moment with our current, scientific knowledge, but could theoretically have that kind of like quantum adhesion that would be required to stick something to a Katamari? And also, it also kind of ties up with the object sort of breaking away as well. Because like as soon as it leaves that really, because it's a very sort of like near field magnetic kind of thing. Like it just, could fall right off.
And well, it's interesting because the other thing that magnets are known for doing is that if you stack a lot of magnets together, it can actually increase the power of the magnetic field. And a Katamari that starts out as like a foot across could eventually could theoretically grow to be a kilometer across. We see that in a lot of the like end game stages where you start with one that's maybe like a meter and you can get it up to be, big enough to roll up clouds. And so in that case, everything that you attach to it then maybe increases the magnetic field in some way. Somehow it's being channeled through these new objects to make it bigger and able to pick up larger things.
Yeah. There's two directions I can go here that are kind of two separate paths. So I want to talk about once they build that big thing, they then turn the Katamaris into some kind of celestial body, and most of them turn into stars. And which the first time I looked at the game, I was like, okay, yeah, it's kind of a cartoony idea that stars are tiny little specks of light in the sky, but like as you get bigger and bigger, you realize that no, they are ginormous, and they're like actually supposed to be star sized. And so then it's like, how can you take a bunch of matter from Earth and turn it into a star? And then I was looking at, if it's like fusion based, we get a massive amount of energy from splitting a single atom, right? So like that's more feasible if I look at it from that lens.
I was actually thinking, as Dak was talking, it made me think of some kind of really exotic matter. Not dark matter necessarily, because one of the things about dark matter is that you can't actually see it. But I was thinking, what if this is some kind of like a giant ball of gluons, for instance? Gluons are subatomic particles that are responsible for I think it's the strong nuclear force, which keeps atoms together, basically. And I don't know what a large ball of these would do. It would probably fly apart and not do anything. It would probably filter out into the ether or explode fantastically. But what if it's just a large ball of gluons, in the same way that like a neutron star is a large ball of neutrons?
Well, one of the things that I think makes this at least a little bit easier for me is I always saw the Katamari as something of a shell, where like the real magic is happening inside of that ball, because it's not just a sphere, right? Like it's kind of like a sphere, and then it's got like these little, almost like hexagonal knobs that sort of protrude out, and I always sort of assumed, okay, well there's some sort of technological force behind like the manufacturing of this mechanism, right? And so like
right
what is inside, who knows,
What if it's just a whole bunch of like little teeny grappling hooks that have cables that are so thin that you can't see them, like spider webs?
Guys, it's a Velcro ball.
Oh, it was just Velcro, and everything in the world is made of Velcro the whole time?
It's Velcro world.
Dang! Wow. And everything is just so meticulously placed in that Velcro world that they never stick to each other. But then when
it's always the opposite sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good theory. I think that works. Yeah. It's either that or grappling hooks, I think.
I like grappling hooks.
Yeah, that's
that actually good. That did make me think of another one that it could be, is that what if it's some kind of just big ball of glue, and as you roll more stuff up, like the glue kind of seeps out and it like covers everything that's on it, and then more things get rolled up and more things get stuck to it, and then more glue gets squirted out, and it just sort of like, I was going to say snowballs, which is exactly what it does.
Well, okay, that worked out well, because I looked up snowballs and how those pack together.
Okay, all right.
And this was interesting because like it seemed intuitive, but I never actually thought about it before. When you pack snow together and you ultimately like roll a bigger, like if you're making a snowman or a snow fort or something, the weight of the accumulating weight of the snow pushes down and packs the snow on the ground further into it so that it can hold more and more. And I learned that what's happening is that the pressure of packing this together causes the edges of the outer snowflakes to slightly melt, creating hydrogen bonds. And once pressure is released, the crystals refreeze, forming a shell. And that holds the snowball together. And that's similar, actually, to how mud packs together or how dirt packs together. It's all like fluid tension and stuff. And I was thinking back to when we talked about how birds flying or ants working together act as a fluid. If we kind of scale up molecular bonds, because we got the King of the Cosmos here. Like he's packing buildings together and they are merging together and acting like a fluid.
Okay.
So that's a way it could work.
I like that. But it still kind of begs the question, why can't we see this force that's like keeping everything together?
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like, is there something that could either be, not visible or like even gaseous or something that is like, is there such thing as like gaseous glue? Or is that just a wrestler?
It could be. Although that actually does that makes me want to bring up something before we get too far away from it. And I think this is an important part of what you're asking. And that is that when you roll up something that's alive, it doesn't immediately get killed. And this is important for two reasons. Because one, you would think that if there was some kind of like, I don't know, something that could get into their lungs or something and suffocate them, or like the amount of stuff piled on top of them could suffocate them, that could be something we could explore. But also, they aren't being crushed by this massive pile. Like, by the end of the game, sometimes you're rolling up whole buildings and you are not killing the people that you've rolled up. And I I fascinating.
Well, until the very end.
Yeah, it's like, can you...
Yeah, where they're launched into deep space, I suppose, yeah.
Ball of plasma.
I think the first game actually ends where there's like a family that you're sort of following through the plot of the game, what plot there is. And the father's an astronaut and he was going to go into space, but all the stars are out, so he doesn't. And I think that his whole family, like him and his 2 kids and wife, get rolled up into this Katamari, and the game ends with them being like on the moon, because the last stage is you recreating the moon. So they're like on the moon now. So they're not dead, which is really weird and interesting.
I don't remember that well enough.
I only remember it because my wife just played through it like maybe 6 months ago.
Wow. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Okay, so actually, let me ask a question here. Do you think temperature has anything to do with this?
Oh, interesting.
Because, like, maybe this is some sort of like ridiculously super cool device, and anything that touches it just immediately freezes to it.
Oh, like your tongue getting stuck to the frost covered.
Yeah, something like that.
hole.
But it's like so cold that even like, beings like humans enter some sort of state of extended animation. They're completely frozen in time.
Ooh.
And like, this is why, although I don't know, are they moving while they're attached to the ball? Let's just say they're not.
I don't remember.
I mean, some of them are.
Is that right? Well, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about watching my wife play through the game. It's like these things are alive and they're like trying to get off.
But are they trying to get out of it?
Or are they just stoked?
They don't run from
fair.
it. Like they just kind of stand around.
Oh, they do run from it.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I thought
Terrified.
they were just on cycles that they would like. Okay.
Until
I
they see like
that.
their buddy get rolled up, and then they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I am out."
Yeah, cops will shoot at you.
That's
okay,
not true.
well-
Is that true?
No, that is true. Yeah, at
That's
least in the
true.
first game. Yeah.
What?
Oh yeah, that happens in the first game at least. I don't know if it happens in any of the subsequent ones, but like, yeah, it's not.
I just didn't remember that. That's okay.
Yeah. Wow. Who knew?
I know. So in
Grand
the
Theft
second
Katamari.
game, we heart Katamari or we love Katamari. I don't actually know which one it is, but the people liked it so much that now they're asking you to make Katamaris. So maybe in the first
What?
game they're just really scared of this. And then in the second game, after they realize, oh, this is fun, then they invite you to come do this.
They enjoy being stuck to the ball.
Well,
does that
I don't know
imply
about that because what's happening is they are asking you to make one and then give it to them. So you're rolling up somebody else.
I wondered if that was implying that like the people who became the stars then like came back after, like they
were like, "That was dope, guys. Get in line."
We'll do
I
it
mean,
again.
maybe. It looks like it could be fun. It's sort of like those carnival rides where you're pinned to the wall, where they spin so fast that it like pushes you up against the wall.
Yeah.
I think what's probably most likely in that scenario is that when they are incinerated by becoming a star, they're simply reincarnated, but with their memories. I think that's probably scientifically what's happening.
Fair. You know what?
That's about as scientific as the rest of the game is, so I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that really, like, in the game really strikes us as like, well, this in particular breaks this cartoon logic? You know, like you mentioned a cloud earlier.
Yeah.
Jim, and of course that's like, how can a cloud, just a little gaseous blob, you know, stick and not dissipate? Like,
right.
How is that happening? And is that a key to unlocking the Katamari's power?
I feel like even worse than the cloud, or better, depending on your point of view, is that you can roll up whirlpools, like take the whole clump of water and just pull it out.
Oh, like in the ocean?
Yeah.
But not normal water. Like, you can still
Apparently
roll
not.
through water, right?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah.
There's also, I think, during the credits, or I remember there's like some kind of like weird bonus stage thing where you're going around the whole globe and you're picking up countries, but
that's
they
the
are
credits.
broken up by like the border distribution.
Yeah.
Well, that's just how the flat Earth actually works.
But it's a globe.
It's a globe. You're going around.
Yeah,
it.
That's why it's a game, Derek.
Oh, right. Yeah,
right,
Katamari.
yeah.
It's fake, not real.
Yeah. It's fun to do that. I was watching, and I'm kind of curious because the original Katamari came out in, I think, like 2002 or something on the PlayStation 2, and the one that my wife was playing was the remake for the Switch. And when she was going up and rolling up all the countries, I'm like, I wonder how many of these countries are still there, or if they like updated it for 2018 or whatever year it came, or I think it came out like 2021 or whatever. I was like, I wonder if these countries have been updated to globe correct for this year.
That seems like work that very few people would pay attention to.
Yeah, and, you know, not to jump the shark on this, you know, very scientific debate, but like, what if this whole thing has to do with like multi-dimensionality, right? Like, maybe the forces that are causing this thing, like maybe the Katamari itself is a catalyst to some sort of different dimension, and that's why we can't see the forces that connect everything to it, you know?
Like the Expanse.
Yeah.
Well, because like the king of all cosmos is like, you know, sort of some kind of deity, like, so there's like a celestial plane kind of thing happening.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because the king of all cosmos is also the one who broke the stars in the first place.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So he's at least big enough to do that.
Like, canonically, didn't he like get drunk one night or something and do that? Like, that is, that's how it happened. That is just that's a great father figure right there.
Yeah. And then makes the sun go around and pick up all the stuff to.
I feel like
basically says it's your fault.
Like, I don't know who the developer is. I don't know who invented Katamari, but that was definitely just his way of avoiding therapy.
This was my childhood.
Well, let me ask you a question. And Jim, especially since you're, you know, a scientist, how would we in our reality create a Katamari or get as close as possible? How could we do that in real life?
I think the problem with the gravity thing is, well, it's twofold actually, because first off, it would have to be a gravitational pull strong enough to like attach it to the ball rather than the Earth. So already you're going to knock the Earth out of its orbit. And secondly, in the game, we don't actually see things falling towards the Katamari. They just stick when you touch it. Right. So with those two things in mind, I'm still thinking, oh, what about like spiderweb fluid?
Dude,
because that stuff is so strong.
100%. I was like, Peter Parker is involved.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is so strong and you can barely see it if it's small enough. Dude, this just comes back to mini grappling hooks.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the Katamari Spider-Man PS2
Katamari Spider-Man
or crossover. Does whatever the Katamari can.
Yeah.
There's some joke with like na 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 and na 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 na.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm
there's something in there that we can.
Yeah.
I'm
we gotta let it
disappointed
cook
I
for a
didn't
bit.
think of that.
Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting about this ball is that it has like no mass. Like the prince can stop it and return, like change directions and push it, even though he's only like canonically an inch tall. So this ball, it has some wild physics properties. I think it's some kind of extra dimensional thing, like you were saying.
Oh, for sure.
Either that or the prince is just jacked.
That's true.
Yeah. This Katamari is actually not special at all. It's just the prince.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did briefly start going into, I guess, the less scientific aspect of this and like thinking about things like magic, right? Like the Harry Potter world. How would they kind of do this? And that would lead me to believe that the mechanisms are not in the Katamari itself, but are with the prince. And he's the one who's basically somehow attaching everything together.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think maybe the Katamari is just like... this is kind of my thought. The Katamari is just a nuclear reactor that is required to become a star, and the prince just is jamming things on it to give it more mass.
Okay.
Like, that's what I think.
Like, so a brown dwarf is a star. Well, a brown dwarf is a weird thing because it's halfway between a star and a planet. It's too massive to be a planet, but it's not massive enough to actually start nuclear fusion. Mm-hmm. What if these are like hyper compact brown dwarfs that are like, I don't know, like 99.99% of the way to igniting, and you just need to roll up like 30 guys rowing out in the middle of the lake. And that's just the right amount of mass.
I think that kind of tracks, Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And add in a little bit of like, super cooling and mini grappling hooks, and I think we've got an explanation.
Yeah.
I think that's the answer for sure. All of those things.
There is one other avenue that we haven't pursued yet, and I think it's an important one to bring up, is that Katamari Damacy translates to clump spirit. Maybe it's just the willpower of all of these people and the prince working together, putting their spirit right into this ball just to, get it to stick. It's just all that willpower,
So it's a spirit bomb.
Kind of, yeah.
Lend me your strength, everyone.
Yeah, and then it does explode at the end into a star.
So I think the big takeaway here is that Katamari is canonically in the same universe as Dragon Ball Z, right?
And Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man, which really opens up the MCU for a lot of opportunity. Disney, give us a call.
I mean, if you really stop to think about it, like the Prince of All Cosmos could be, like one of those super beings that is as strong as Goku, because it's just pushing this ball. He's just like you said, he's jacked. He's just really, oh man, this thing is like has building. It's got to have like several metric tons worth of material, and he will stop on a dime and switch directions. And there's like very little loss of inertia there. It's amazing.
I'll be honest, he would make a really cool superhero,
Yeah.
Like that's your thing, is you just throw a ball at people and then they can never leave it. That's it. I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, listeners, there's more to say about this. There's more theories, but I'm pretty sure we solved it. So I think we should probably move on to our second question this week. And that is, why do the toys in Toy Story hide that they are alive?
Oh man, I love this question so much. Who asked this question? Do we know, or is this just...
This one's anonymous.
Okay. Wow. That's an awesome question, because there's so much to explore here. I mean, for one, you've got these toys that just somehow inherently know, presumably when they're manufactured, that they should stay quiet in front of humans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I guess aside from Buzz Lightyear or whatever, right? Because he did kind of break that little rule.
The explanation for that given in the first movie was that Buzz is unfamiliar with the territory and he needs to fit in with the natives. So when they all freeze, he does too, just so that he doesn't get found out. So
this to me says something about I think there's like some ancient reason why toys must hide from humanity. You know, like I think there's let's call it like a prime directive.
Oh,
that's built into toys, and by somehow exposing their sentience to biological beings, it puts their very existence, or at least their sentience, at risk.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That kind of fits in with something that I was thinking, and that is, so I don't remember all of the details behind this, but there was someone I went to college with did their like big senior project literary analysis on Toy Story, and he was a religion double major. And he did this big analysis of the religious interpretations of Toy Story, with Andy being like God and the toys being humanity. And that kind of, without getting too in the weeds of that, because I genuinely don't remember the whole argument, but it did kind of make me think that the toys are clearly, they get their life, they get their sense of self from their bond with Andy. And I'm thinking that, like, because even if you look at when Andy is playing with them, we see their perspective. They perceive themselves as being on these adventures, as opposed to feeling like they are frozen, lifeless toys in Andy's hands. And I think that they need Andy to come and play with them to kind of like recharge them and give them more life.
Interesting.
So if they were to walk around, they'd be like squandering that life. Basically, they'd be ignoring Andy to just live their lives. Whereas when they freeze and Andy plays with them, he's like recharging them.
I feel like there's something in the movies, I might be remembering this wrong, but like, aren't there, you know, like the forgotten toys? Like they're so scared of basically being, you know, discarded, because to them that is, you know, synonymous with death. That kind of would make sense. Like if they are no longer going to be in contact with, you know, humans or the human energy or something, maybe that is when they sort of start to cease having their life force, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of being forgotten is being abandoned is like the end for them.
Right.
Yeah. Although it seems that in that case, though, they are probably somewhat immortal, because if somebody comes along and then begins to play with them, then they seem like they're okay. Although there is, what was his name? Stinky Pete in the second one.
Right.
The prospector guy?
Yeah. Because he was new in box. No one ever played with him, but he seemed okay. So maybe it's not necessarily playing. Maybe it's the love that a person has.
Exactly. Because think of all the adulation he had, right? Like people came to see him. You know, they were still giving him energy despite, you know, like physically playing with him.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
right.
But he was not... he was not loved and imagined with as like Woody and Buzz were, so they had like this childhood purity about them, whereas Stinky Pete was clearly a more malevolent character.
Yeah.
Interesting.
On the other hand, in the third movie, the bear, I forget the bear's name, but the bear was played with and still was just a jerk.
Well, I mean, sometimes people just be like that.
Sometimes,
That's
There's
just
no
a fact
accounting
of
for
life.
it. I want to say like Lotso or something.
That sounds
I think
kind of
that's
right.
it.
Yeah.
So there's a fan theory that I just wanted to mention. I don't actually particularly like this interpretation of the movie, but it kind of goes with the idea that the toys don't perceive their time with Andy as sitting in the room. They perceive it as an adventure that they're on. They perceive it as what Andy is imagining. And there is a fan theory that is actually what the entirety of the first movie is, which kind of discredits like everything we've been saying. But I just wanted to make sure I mentioned it because somebody probably else will.
Well, I mean, you know, that's just wrong. And we don't need to go into why. But I mean, you know, think about it. Think about then the interaction with Sid, right? This is
Yeah.
the one time where they break their proverbial fourth wall with the
Yeah.
humans, right? And you'll notice how carefully crafted that scene and how meticulous it really was and how risky it was. And because it was so risky, that tells me that not only was this like scary to just address this like psychotic little kid, but maybe it was putting their very existence, at risk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because they were genuine. Because we already saw that the toys can be taken apart and reassembled, and it won't kill them.
Oh, right.
So, but Woody was genuinely afraid for his life, and like they needed to rescue Woody.
Right.
So I think you're right that like there was something more at stake there.
I really love the idea that whatever is giving them life is delicately held in this balance of whether or not the humans know that they exist as sentient life forms. Like the moment that they know it, like the game's over, right?
Yeah.
But there's got to be some sort of threshold because obviously some humans have interacted, with the toys as life forms, like Sid, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he can't be the only one in the world.
Exactly.
Well, the dog too.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but dogs are basically toys, so
Yeah.
sorry, pet owners. So I mean that implies like that whatever's giving them this life form, they need a shroud of ignorance for humanity to have in order for them to even exist, because it's not even just directly seeing these, little toys move around, but they're often in different places. They often have like probably marks all over them from their little adventures. And I think that there's something at least borderline supernatural keeping the state of, their existence, in this like balance where humans are not consciously aware of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to bring up, and this is kind of related to the interaction with Sid and what would happen if they were less careful about revealing themselves, and also the idea that they do have this inherent kind of personality, this supernatural element about them. And I want to bring up a similar inferior movie.
I know you're. Yes,
Small Soldiers.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Right,
And
that's like Toy Story for teenagers.
It's like Toy Story, yeah. And it's and the whole idea behind that, the premise of that, is that some company developed these computer chips that make the toys,
that's right.
have the ability to have brains and stuff. But something that's weird about it, if you compare it to Toy Story, is those toys still have like the personalities that their like characters had.
Right.
So it's like there's still something inherent about their being, I guess.
Okay. Let me toss something to you here. First off, that AI chip, the X1000, I don't think it's real.
What?
Okay. First off, I don't think it's real. Secondly, that like little like everlasting infinite battery that they were talking about, like that's how they like waved away, like, oh, how come they don't run out of batteries?
Right.
I don't think that's real either.
You don't think that's real? Okay.
You know what? In under further scrutiny, if you take a look at these, the little toys, it's not like they have articulating motors in every single joint. It's not like even a battery and a microchip would somehow allow them to walk around, right, and talk.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is that's as Gen Z would call, that's just pure copium from from humanity, because I think that is the way that those toys in Small Soldiers are able to get away with showing this like supernatural power, but it's under this guise, this understanding that, oh, it's just, it's microchips, it's something like that. And there's some sort of maybe supernatural ignorance that is washed over humanity, that they just automatically accept that. They're like, oh yeah, of course, it's the X1000. That's a great chip. You know?
Yeah. It's the idea. Buffy the Vampire Slayer does it, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's a thing I like to reference a lot. Where there's this, if you have the slightest plausibility to an explanation other than supernatural events, people will just accept it.
I love it.
And it's like, yeah, I think that's what's happening, because you also, in Small Soldiers, they animate a bunch of Barbie dolls that also don't have like articulated joints and stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
We all know Small Soldiers and Toy Story are in the same universe.
They absolutely have to be, right? Like, there's
Probably.
no way that they're not. Okay. But what about the Brave Little Toaster?
Oh, well, toasters aren't toys. You don't play with toasters. How dare
very
you?
upset now. I have spent more time thinking about the Brave Little Toaster than I am willing to admit.
That you were allowed to emit by law.
Than I'm allowed to, because I don't know, because like everything that's very similar to Toy Story, because it's these abandoned things going on this quest. And by the end of the movie, it turns out that the kid was gonna go back to the cabin and pick them up anyway. So they didn't even have to leave. And I don't know, I look at, what's that called? Pareidolia?
Oh, yeah.
Where just like you look at a thing, like I'll look at a kitchen sink and I'll be like, oh, the knobs kind of look like eyes and the faucet kind of looks like a nose, and then the sink is its big mouth. I don't know.
I know what you mean, yeah. I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about is like, what's in it for the toys, you know? So like, I think that if people found out that toys were alive and sentient, I think a lot of people would like, I don't know, I feel like they'd get depressed because they're like, oh man, you know, 30 years ago when I threw out my doll, I didn't realize it was alive. And I think that the toys are just perpetuating this so they don't hurt us. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so they're just being nice to us. They're like,
yeah.
They don't want to reveal themselves because they don't want like humanity to crumble under its own guilt.
I'm picturing a teddy bear in a garbage can being like, well, I don't want them to feel bad about this.
Right.
What? Oh, I don't want to be a bother. It just turns out all toys are Canadian.
Yeah. Well, because the thing is that the toys really like people and they like being liked. And so I feel like they don't want to hurt us. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, when they revealed themselves to Sid, that probably scarred that kid for life.
Yeah, but he
deserves
deserved
a
it.
jerk.
Yeah, but like I mean,
they
don't want to do that to other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but all right, going back to like the original question, how are they doing this? How does it work?
You're right, because they do have like an instinctive, like it's not like they have to watch for somebody to open the door or something. It's as soon as somebody walks in the door, they just fall down. Like
right.
They know that
they have really good hearing. Great sense of hearing.
Well, I mean, I think that there's got to be something supernatural to this, right? I mean, I just feel like it's got to be. But I love the idea that it really is just sort of like this toy code that is. It's like the Prime Directive built into an AI, right? It's like the rules of robotics, where you can code whatever else on top of it. And I mean, you even see this with Buzz, right? Because perhaps Buzz, and not even just the one that's in the movie, but like all of the Buzz Lightyears who think that they're real, maybe they still inherently do not break that rule of like, well, I got to go to sleep whenever humans are around, because that's just somehow built into their fundamental DNA.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that if they're all still in the store, they're like, they haven't been exposed to people in any sort of meaningful way. And we see like with the Stinky Pete character, like they could be exposed to people in such a way that turns them into kind of like a more egocentric person.
Right.
And if you look at Buzz, when he first arrives in Andy's room, he does still have the natural, I need to blend in I need to hide around humans. But you also see like that the first movie, if you isolate the first movie from the rest of the series, you see Buzz's character arc as he starts with kind of the default Buzz Lightyear personality and then grows to become Andy's Buzz Lightyear. And that's with kind of the exposure to a specific person. So I think you're right that they have like a default need to protect themselves, I guess. But then it doesn't take long for them to learn from the person who is playing with them.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's how I think that works.
Yeah, or even like the other toys that are around that also share Andy's energy, you know, like it could be, yeah. Well, so what's at stake, do you think? You know, assuming that they're not just being completely altruistic and don't want to traumatize children and humanity, you know, what really happens if they blow the lid off of this? You know, I would think that there would at least be a subset of toys that are like, guys, you know what? Dude, screw this. Like, we're alive. Like, I should be able to vote. Are you kidding? You know? So, like...
Why do I have to lay in this garbage can and get thrown out?
Like, there's got to be something life-threatening about their secrecy.
Yeah, and to some degree, I think that it's the more focused they are on like selfishness, I guess, the more they are prone to like the desires of I don't know, like greed and self-centeredness and like hurting other people, I guess. Like this idea of being afraid of being abandoned, like Lotso in the third movie, he wanted to just be loved by someone, but he didn't know how to accomplish that without actually hurting other people. Like other people's success he viewed as his failure. Whereas Andy's toys always are happy that the other toys are happy, I guess. And so I kind of see, and that factors more into the religious interpretation, which I tried to just summarize briefly. But I think it's interesting.
I think that, and to sort of expand on that, can you imagine what would happen to human society if it was like, oh, these toys have been alive all along? And it would be, I think, equivalent to if we found out that aliens were here. Like, people would be running through the streets panicking, and the toys would be like, we're friendly, don't do this. And people would just be like freaking out everywhere because it's just one of those things that would change fundamentally how we look at the world.
Yeah, I mean, anyone with a 3D printer is now essentially a god.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, interesting. Well, because I'm looking back at Small Soldiers, where like people didn't think of them as toys anymore; they thought of them as these are monsters, so we have to destroy them. And then at the end of Toy Story 3, like they're all thrown into an incinerator. So there is, if they are completely destroyed, I think that is something they want to avoid, right?
Is there ever a such thing as like, you know, just general toy death from them though? You know, like I don't know. Is there an example in any of the movies where there's just a toy and they're like, oh yeah, that one just doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the closest you get is they are afraid of being incinerated, but like there isn't an example that I can remember of one that has been incinerated.
Right.
At the end of the third one, they almost got incinerated. And they accepted it. They were like, well, we can't get out of here, so let's just all hold hands and die.
It's such a sad moment.
Yeah, it really is.
Pixar is too heavy sometimes.
Yeah, all the time. Going back to Sid's toys, let me propose a little philosophical question for you guys. Where in the toy is the soul?
Oh, I don't know.
That's a brand new sentence, by the way.
The toy is the soul. Oh, well, I don't know. Woody's got those cowboy boots. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry.
I mean, if Toy Story 4 is any indication, it's not in like the talk box area.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Okay.
Boy, Maybe toys don't have souls. Maybe they're just alive, but they don't have souls.
Well, then that begs the question, like what's going on with Sid's toys? Like, are they at constant schizophrenic battle with themselves?
I think they're just in constant suffering. Yeah,
because they're all Frankenstein. Well, okay, so if you look at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and we've talked about this before, like Frankenstein's monster is not a combination of the people that body parts made him up. He is a brand new consciousness. So like maybe that's what happened to Sid's toys?
Oh, interesting. So the previous toys kind of would experience soul death, but then, well, I guess that sort of begs the question, like, what if it happens gradually, right? Because we've seen that, Woody gets damaged and then he gets repaired. And even though his repairs are pretty minor, it's still thread, and it's thread that wasn't there initially. I feel like examining this could solve the paradox of the ship of Theseus, right? Like, at what
just gonna say that.
Yeah, at what point is Woody no longer Woody after all of these repairs, and does that mean that he then becomes a different being?
Yeah. I want to know, because my inclination is to think if Woody's head were to fall off or something, and I don't know if anything like that happened in the movies. I don't.
Mr.
I just don't
Potato
remember.
Head, kind of.
Oh, Mr. Potato Head. So if he takes random parts and puts them on himself, like he's still him. So I guess they probably have like a brain somewhere, but I don't know, because you could also mix two brains of two toys together.
The other thing is that, I mean, you have the notion of like humans also sort of repair themselves, and after so many years, basically all the cells in our body have been replenished at some point. So for a living creature, I don't know if that counts in the same way that a toy would, but I mean, as long as maybe they don't have like a brainal zone.
Technical term there.
Yeah. Maybe they're just like infused with their consciousness until they are too badly damaged to continue.
I like that.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
A vapor cloud of consciousness filling their bodies.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense. And how they're able to also somehow have full movement. Yeah, that totally tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
No, but I accept it.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to accept the facts that are given in the media that you consume.
How do they move?
I mean, some of them have to have points of articulation.
Yeah, but like how do they they don't have muscle
Woody
fibers.
is mostly cloth.
Yeah.
Yeah, Woody doesn't even have bones, man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's magic.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's just magic.
It's just magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same magic that powers the Katamari. You know what? I think it's tiny grappling hooks.
Tiny grappling hooks and spider web fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Two birds with one stone.
We solved another one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just to wrap it up, has anyone ever considered that maybe toys just don't want to talk to people? Like,
dude, honestly, we're awful.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. That's when we talked about speak with animals, and I'm like, yeah, maybe the animals just don't want to talk to you. That's the most plausible.
That is
explanation for me.
We're not.
They
great.
just don't want to talk to you. We're not great.
Like aliens exist, they just are like, nah, dude. You've seen the Kardashians, like you know what's going on. It's nah.
We made contact. We're done.
Yeah. So one thing that I love so much about this podcast is that
it's how great it is.
We have never actually come to a conclusion about any of the topics that we've discussed.
No, we have to keep the conversation going.
But in some way, I think it all makes sense. I think it's correct.
Yeah.
I think we've nailed it.
Well, we're using nails instead of grappling hooks.
Yeah, in the X1000 chip.
Ah, okay, cool. All right, listeners. Well, let us know, why do the Katamari Damacy balls stop moving when humans are around? That's just not even.
Not factually accurate.
It's not even a good question. I don't know. But if you have any thoughts on that or anything else we talked about, you can let us know by emailing us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook or Twitter, YouTube also.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listener. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, you can email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out. And so does telling your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends or tell their toys, and their toys can download the podcast, and that just helps us even more.
Yeah, I mean, any download's a download. Besides, toys might find it interesting if they're alive.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. I can't promise you that the things on there won't come to life, but they will look really great on your shelf.
I find it unlikely, but yeah, you're right.
I can't promise anything.
We don't promise anything.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you to Dak for being our guest this week.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a blast as always.
Yay. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Dak, and I'm going to go buy a grappling hook.
Nice.
Good idea.
We'll see you next time.
Toodaloo, everyone. Once we're famous enough, they'll make a video game based on Vaguely Scientific, and it will be a point-and-click adventure.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, both of those out of the way.
Oh.